Good morning, everyone. So let me continue the proof of the lemma which was required to prove the open mapping theorem. So this lemma, let me just restate it. Let V and W be Banach spaces. And let T be a bounded linear operator from V to W. And this is surjective. Then there exists C greater than 0 such that the open ball of radius C centered at origin. This is contained inside the image of the unit ball of V. So for the proof of this, we did step 1 last time. So we proved that there exists C greater than 0 such that the ball of radius 2C is contained inside the closure of unit ball, the image of the unit ball. So this we saw yesterday. Now we want to prove that this will imply that the open ball of radius C will be contained inside T of unit ball. So step 2. We will show that the ball of radius C is contained inside T of the unit ball. So for this, we take any element of this. So let Y belongs to the open ball of radius C. We want to find X such that we need find X such that X in V such that actually we want X in the unit ball. So let's say X in the unit ball such that T of X is V is equal to Y. Right? So any Y in this is should be equal to T of X for some X in the unit ball, open unit ball. So what we are given is that BW 02C is contained inside closure of this. Let's call this star. So Y belongs to BW 0C. This implies 2Y belongs to BW of 0 2C. Right? Norm of 2Y will be less than 2C. So now we can apply this star. So applying star, we get that there is some point. So let's call there exists Z belonging to PV of 0, 1 such that this 2y minus Z norm is less than any given epsilon. I can find this. So let's take epsilon equal to uh, we want okay, not Z, this is 2y minus t of Z. This can be made less than any given epsilon. So let's take epsilon is equal to C by taking epsilon equal to C. This is positive. So because this is in the closure, 2y is in the closure of this. So there exists some Z in the unit ball such that 2y minus t of Z norm is less than this epsilon. So this implies this is same thing as y minus t of Z by 2 is less than C by 2. And norm of Z by 2 will be less than half. So therefore, there exists, let's write that as Z1 such that there exists Z1 in V such that norm Z1 is less than half and norm of TZ1 minus Y is less than C by 2. Right? This is same thing as this norm of TZ1. Z1 I am writing Z by 2 minus Y is less than C by 2. And because Z is in norm Z is less than 1, so norm of Z1 will be less than half. This is by taking Z1 is equal to Z by 2. So we have got a Z1 whose norm is less than half and norm of TZ1 minus Y is less than C by 2. Now we will find another Z2 such that norm Z2 is less than 1 by 4 and the norm of T of Z1 plus Z2 minus Y that will be less than C by 4. So to do that, note that this implies this norm of TZ1 minus Y less than C by 2. This implies norm of, if I multiply by 4, then we can write uh, T times 4Z1 minus 4Y. This will be less than 2C. So this implies that this vector is in the ball of radius 2C. So if I again apply, so this implies that T of 4Z1 minus 4Y belongs to BW of 0 to C. So by star, there exists some vector such that this let's call this Z prime V. So norm of Z prime is less than 1 and norm of P of Z prime minus this P of 4Z1 minus 4Y. In fact, let me write this as 4Y minus T of 4Z1. This is less than, now I'll take again epsilon is equal to C. Is it okay? This is again by applying star. So what does this imply? So here note that instead of T 4Z1 minus 4Y, I can write the minus of this also. So this can be written as 4Y minus. So this is equivalent to if I write this as T of Z prime by 4 plus Z1 minus Y, this is less than C by 4. So therefore, by taking Z2 equal to Z prime by 4, we have norm of Z2 will be less than 1 by 4 and norm of T of Z1 plus Z2 minus Y is less than C by 4. So inductively we can get a sequence Zn in V such that norm of Zn is less than 1 by 2 to the n and norm of T of Z1 plus Z2 up to Zn minus Y is less than C by 2 to the n. Right, because again you can multiply this inequality by 8 and then you will get less than 2C, and then you apply star to that vector and then you get Z3, and by induction you can prove that if you have chosen Z1 Z2 up to Zn, then you can choose Zn plus 1 satisfying this. So now what we get, because norm of Zn is less than 1 by 2 to the n, sorry, since norm Zn is less than 1 by 2 to the n, the sequence Z1 plus Z2 up to Zn This is a Cauchy sequence in V. Right, this is easy to prove that this becomes a Cauchy sequence. So now using that V is a Banach space, V is complete. So this sequence will converge to some element. Since V is complete, this Z1 plus Z2 plus Zn this converges to some Z in V. And what can we say about Z? Also, norm of Z will be equal to limit of norm of Z1 plus Z2 plus Zn. Because Z is the limit of this sum, and this is less than equal to, because norm of Zn is less than 1 by 2 to the n. So this will be less than equal to limit n tending to infinity of norm Z1 was less than 1 by 2 plus 1 by 2 square up to 1 by 2 to the n. And this sum is equal to 1. This is in fact strictly a yeah. So norm of Z So I mean, I should get that norm of Z is strictly. So we have because T of Z1 plus Z2 plus Zn minus Y is norm is less than C by 2 to the n. So by taking limit n tending to infinity, we'll get that norm of Tz minus Y will be 0. So let me write that first. So since norm of T of Z1 plus Z2 Zn minus Y is less than C by 2 to the n, norm of Tz minus Y, that will be is equal to 0, and this implies that Y is equal to T of Z. So we got Y is equal to T of Z. Also, we should ensure that Z belongs to BV01 because we want to prove that there exists some X. Instead of X, let me write here Z so that it is consistent with this. Z belonging to the unit ball so that P of Z is equal to Y. So now we got TZ equal to Y, and also we should have norm Z is less than 1. So right. So since we have this, you can see that uh, norm of Z1 plus Z2 plus Zn. This is less than equal to norm Z1 plus norm Z2 plus norm Zn, which is less than half plus 1 by 2 square up to 1 by 2 to the n. And the right hand side that converges to 1. So I mean that way we can only say that norm of Z is less than equal to 1, but actually you can see that this is less than 1 also, because here let me leave norm Z1 like that. So if I keep the first term norm Z1, and plus 1 by 2 square up to 1 by 2 to the n, still we have this is strictly less than this. And now by taking the limit as n tending to infinity, we get norm Z will be less than equal to norm of Z1 plus 1 by 2, which is less than half plus half is 1. So therefore, this norm Z is strictly less than 1. So this proves that PW of 0C is contained inside T of BV of 01. Is it okay? And then by using this lemma, we have already seen that now we can prove the open mapping theorem, which says that if T is a surjective bonded linear transformation between two Banach spaces, then T has to be an open map. Now let's see some corollaries, some consequences of the open mapping theorem. So first one is let V and W be Banach spaces, and let T belonging to VW be a bijection. So it is 1, 1 as well as onto. Then T is an isomorphism. So what is the meaning of isomorphism between two nonlinear spaces? It means that you should have uh, T is a bounded linear operator and T inverse is also bounded linear. So it is T inverse from W to V is bounded. If you have linear transformation, then the inverse map is again linear. So only thing here you have to see whether this is continuous or not. This is bounded. So the proof of this is now easy using open mapping theorem. So by the open mapping theorem, open mapping theorem says that if you have a bounded linear operator uh, between two Banach spaces, and if it is onto, then it is an open map. So here you are given 1, 1 as well as onto. So by using onto, we know that T is an open map. And if you have T is an open map, then this implies that T inverse is continuous. Because if you take any inverse image of, so this implies T inverse from W to V is continuous. Because T inverse, if you take the inverse image of this, so if U is open in V, then we have to take T inverse of U. This is same as T of U is open in W. This is because T is an open map, and that is the by definition of continuity that implies that T inverse is continuous. So therefore T inverse is a bounded linear operator from W to V, and this implies T is an isomorphism. So here it is important that both the spaces are complete. Then if you have any bounded linear transformation, and if it is both 1, 1 and onto, then it becomes an isomorphism. If one of the spaces is not complete, then this result is not true. Another corollary is, suppose we have a Banach space V with respect to two norms, norm 1 and norm 2. So we have two different norms, and with respect to each, this is complete. Assume that there exists a constant c greater than 0 such that norm of x1 is less than equal to c times norm x2 for all x in V. Then the conclusion is that both the norms are equivalent. So what was the definition of equivalent norms? So we saw that the two norms are equivalent if there exist two constants such that norm x1 is less than equal to some c2 times norm x2 and bigger than equal to c1 times norm x1, where c1 and c2 are positive constant. So here we are only given one inequality, that norm x1 is less than equal to c times norm x2. So we claim that this implies the other way also, that norm x2 will be less than equal to some constant times norm x1 also, and hence the two norms are equivalent. So to prove this, given that this norm x1 is less than equal to c times norm x2, if we look at the identity map, so consider the identity map I from V with norm 2 to V with norm 1. So both of these are Banach spaces, and this identity map is a linear transformation. Now, given this condition that norm x1 is less than equal to c times norm x2, so since norm x1 is less than equal to c times norm x2, this identity map, this becomes a bounded linear operator. So this I is a bounded linear transformation. Right, because I of x is same as x. So this says that the image of any element, the norm in this is less than equal to constant times norm of x in this. So that is by definition of bounded linear transformation. This is bounded. So now also identity is a bijection. So we can apply the previous corollary. Bijection. So by the previous corollary, so actually the previous corollary is also given name in some book. This is called bounded inverse theorem. This says that if you have two Banach spaces and then there is a 1 on 2 bounded linear transformation, then the inverse is also bounded. So that is the bounded inverse theorem. So we are applying that. So we get that the inverse is also continuous. I inverse is continuous, and this implies there exists some constant C prime greater than 0 such that so I inverse will be the identity map from V with norm 1 to V with norm 2. So this being continuous means that I inverse of any element here which is here. So that means that norm of x 2 will be less than equal to C prime times norm x1. This is true for all x in V. And therefore, the two norms are equivalent. Norm 1 and norm 2 are equivalent. Okay, so next, let me start with the closed graph theorem. So actually, for the minor exam, up to this, you can prepare for the minor exam. So open mapping theorem and its corollary. Whatever I am going to do now, because I won't be able to finish that. So that closed graph theorem, you can leave for the midterm exam.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, everyone in our class is requesting to reduce the syllabus a bit, like uh, up till Hahn-Banach separation theorem.
No, see, because we are having only one midterm exam, right? Normally, you have two midterm exams in a semester and final. So now we have already like only two exams. Quiz also I could not conduct till now. We have to conduct two quizzes also later. So I think it's better to like include this pair category theorem and some of its applications also.
But sir, it will be like tough for us because uh, I
Okay,
mean,
so maybe what I'll do, this open mapping theorem I can leave, but the other one that Banach-Steinhaus theorem that we already did like two lectures before this. So, so let me keep it till the principle of uniform boundedness. Okay, I can't reduce it more because see otherwise there are not like many topics to ask questions from. So let us keep it till the Banach-Steinhaus theorem and its corollaries. And this open mapping theorem and closed graph theorem, these things, maybe later I can have a quiz based on these topics. So that is final. I'll send an email also today confirming the syllabus. Okay, let me, because I have like around 15 minutes left. So let me just discuss this other closed graph theorem. So this is the next topic. So first of all, say we can define a graph of any function. So if we have class, class. So yeah, so suppose f is any function from x to y. So for any function f from x to y, the graph of f is defined by, so we'll write this as gf. So this is nothing but x comma f of x where x belongs to capital X. Right. So this G of f, graph of f, is a subset of x cross y. So this is how like you would define the graph, right? If I have a function from say a R to R or a subset of R to R, then the graph means that you will look at in R2, subset of R2, the point of the form x comma y where y is equal to f of x, right? So that is exactly this. Here note that this x and y can be any sets, and we can define the graph of f. Now if these x and y have some structure, then we will see that what we can say. So suppose we have topological spaces. So this is something which you might have seen in topology course. So let me just state this proposition. Let x and y be topological spaces and let y be Hausdorff. So we assume that y is a Hausdorff topological space, which means that given any 2 points in y, there exist disjoint neighborhoods containing those 2 points. So if we assume y to be Hausdorff and suppose f is any continuous map, let f from x to y be continuous, then the graph of f is closed in x cross y. The graph of f is a subset of x cross y, where if x and y are topological space, then x cross y is given the product topology. With the product topology. So this says that the graph of any continuous map is always a closed subspace of the product space x cross y. So this you must have seen in topology course, but anyway, let's see the proof. The proof is not difficult. So to prove this, so if we want to show that graph of f is closed, so we will prove that its complement is open. So let x comma y belongs to x cross y minus the graph of f. Then we want to prove that there exists an open set containing x cross y, which is again contained inside this complement. So we will show that there exists an open set in x cross y containing this point x comma y and which is disjoint from G of f. That will mean that that open set is contained inside this complement, and that proves that this complement is an open set, and therefore G of f is closed set. So now if x cross y is not in graph of f, since x comma y does not belong to graph of f, y is not equal to f of x. So if y is not equal to f of x, now we get two distinct points in the Hausdorff space y. So since y is Hausdorff, there exist open sets u in x, sorry, open sets u and v in y such that x, fx and y are the sets. So fx belongs to u, y belongs to v, and u intersection v is empty. Right, this is by the definition of Hausdorff. So we get this. This implies x belongs to f inverse of u and y belongs to v. So now we got that because f is open, f inverse of u is open. This is open since f is continuous and u is open in y. So this f inverse u is open in x. So we have got an open set containing x and another open set containing y. So x comma y, therefore this f inverse u cross y, if I take cross v, this is an open set in x cross y containing the point x comma y. Right, so we have got an open set containing this x comma y. If you prove that this open set is disjoint from graph of f, then we are done. So the claim is that f inverse u cross v intersection with graph of f is empty. Then we will be done. So how to prove this? So suppose that this is not true. Suppose not, then there exists some point which is in graph f and in this also. So then there exists some u comma v such that u belongs to f inverse of u, v belongs to v, and v is equal to f of u. Because we are assuming that this u comma v is in this product as well as in graph of f. So u comma v belonging to graph of f means that v is equal to f of u, and u comma v is in this, so u is in f inverse u and v is in v. But then u belongs to f inverse of u means f of u belongs to capital U. F inverse of capital U implies f of u belongs to capital U, but f of u is same as v, So V belongs to capital U, but V was in capital V also. So this will imply that V belongs to U intersection V, but U intersection V was empty. So this is a contradiction. So hence we are done. So this was just a topological result, that if we have any continuous map from a topological space to a Hausdorff topological space, then the graph will always be closed. Now the important thing for this functional analysis is that the closed graph theorem, that if we have V and W are Banach spaces, and we have uh, a linear map from V to W whose graph is closed, then the map T has to be continuous. So that is like the converse of this. So in general, the converse is not true, that if graph is closed, that does not imply f is continuous. So let me write this remark. In general, the converse of the previous proposition is not true. So you can have a discontinuous map whose graph is closed. But if however, if V and W are Banach spaces and TV to W is linear, then the converse is true, and this is actually the closed graph theorem by the closed graph theorem. So the closed graph theorem is the statement I'll write. Let V and W be Banach spaces, and T be a linear transformation from V to W. Assume that the graph of this linear transformation T is closed in V cross W, then T is continuous. And hence, this T is a bounded linear operator from V to W. So, of course, the converse is already true by the previous proposition. So, we can write this if and only if also, that the graph of T is closed if and only if T is continuous for a linear transformation from V to W. Important thing is that V and W should be Banach spaces. So you can get example where this V or W is not complete. In that case, the graph can be closed, but T is not continuous. That can happen. Let me stop here. after the exam in the next class, I'll prove this. The proof of this theorem is not very difficult. So we will prove this, and then maybe I'll give one or two application of this, and after that we will discuss some more topics.
So for the rest of the course, you'll be following Keshavan's book.
I don't know, but till now, like initially, I thought that I'll follow this other book, Bolobas, but I found that the Keswan's books, maybe it is easier to like read, and the exposition is very simple. So for students' point of view, I think it is like easier. So I have been doing this since long. With certain things maybe I take from some other place also. So I'll decide whether like I'll continue like Hilbert spaces also. Maybe I'll continue from this only. And if there is some topic that I want to cover which is not given in this book, then I may do from other places. I have to decide whether I'll do this week and week start topology. So that is one important part, but sometime due to lack of time, we are not able to do. So I'll decide whether I should do this also. And Hilbert space definitely I'll spend time on. And also compact operators I want to discuss. So I'll have to decide based on time whether weak topologies and weak star topologies, those things, whether I'll cover or not. But yeah, case one book is quite good for this first course. So I think it is enough if you cover the case one book.
And how is this book by Kreyszig?
Kreyszig, again, see, I have not taught from that before, but I have seen the book and it is also good. But if you see the book, it is quite fat, and then it might look like there is a lot of topic in there. So it becomes little difficult. Like if I teach from a book where there are too many pages, then it might look like it is difficult to cover. But otherwise, for self study, it is also good. And there are many good books. Like there are some books which are like more advanced, like Conway. There is a course in functional analysis. So that is again a very good book, but I didn't want to use that for this first course for MSc, because that again is little difficult for in the beginning to read from that. But Conway is a good book. Of course, Rudin functional analysis is a standard book, but that again goes more advanced and more general results. So again, it is not appropriate for a first course on functional analysis. But those are all very good books which you can read for further reading of functional analysis. You can consider those. Okay, I'll stop here because I have a meeting at 12. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.